They stood around the military-grade SUV like priests at a broken altar. Wrenches clicked, curses flew, and diagnostics blinked uselessly. The engine coughed once, then fell silent like a wounded soldier who'd had enough. It was day 4. Every engineer was out of ideas, and patience was running thinner than desert air. That's when the general made a quiet call. No yelling, no blame. Just a single name spoken into a secure line. Bring him in. No one questioned who he was. They'd heard stories, whispers of a war-torn mechanic who once rebuilt tanks with duct tape and instinct. Some said he retired, said he disappeared. A chopper arrived at dusk. Wind howled through the hangar like it recognized him before they did. Out stepped a thin, wiry figure. Wrinkled hands, steely eyes, and a gait that didn't beg for respect, but commanded it. The room quieted. The SUV didn't know it yet, but its fate had just changed. The base was quiet that morning. Too quiet for a place built to withstand fire and fury. Rows of dormant tanks sat beneath canvas covers, engines cold, painful. But one hulk stood apart, not because it was larger or louder, but because it had failed. No engineer could revive it. No one tried anymore. It had been pulled from storage months ago. A Cold War-era beast. Rusted solid, systems fried, wires like old veins gone dry. They tried digital interfaces, tried AI calibration, tried standard rebuild procedures. Nothing worked. It wasn't just dead. It was done. Until the general made a call he swore he'd never make again. Jack Whitmore hadn't touched a tank in over 2 decades. He hadn't stepped on a military base in his hands, once quick and scarred from battle, now built fishing rods for children by a lakeside cabin. But when the general's number appeared on his dusty landline, Jack didn't hesitate. I'll be there by dawn. The officers mocked the decision. A relic to fix a relic. One laughed. But the general didn't flinch. He's not a relic, he said. He's the reason your father came home from Boost. And with that, the orders were signed. Just one name scrawled on the access sheet. Whitmore, Jack Sevilla. The next morning he arrived in a beat-up pickup truck that looked older than the barracks themselves. No uniform, just denim, a thermal shirt, and boots so worn they whispered stories of every road they'd crossed. He didn't salute, didn't smile, just looked at the tank, the one no one could wake, and nodded once. Hayes, the young engineer on shift, scoffed, "You're the miracle worker." Jack didn't answer, just dropped a dented toolbox to the concrete with a clang that echoed like a warning. Then he walked toward the tank, not fast, not slow, just steady, like a man who didn't need permission from the past to face it. He ran a palm along the hull. Rust flaked off in small, bitter pieces. Jack closed his eyes. "Still warm," he muttered. Hayes blinked. What? Jack didn't explain. He crouched low, listening. Really listening. Not for sound. For silence. For the kind of silence that spoke louder than diagnostics. Hayes rolled his eyes. Great. A poet. Jack ignored him. He opened the side panel by hand. No gloves, no tools. The bolts gave way without a fight. Inside, chaos. Wires tangled like old nerves. Boards burnt. Oil pooled at the bottom like black regret. He whispered, "She's not dead, just mad." The general watched from afar, arms crossed. "He's already talking to it," one colonel murmured. The general grinned faintly. "That's how you know he's serious." Because Jack never wasted words. Not during the raids. Not when they lost Denver's squad in the valley. And not when he rebuilt an APC, blindfolded in hostile terrain. Jack only spoke when it mattered. Inside the tank, Jack began clearing debris. Not with speed, but care. Each bolt, each panel, each scorched line, handled like an artifact. Hayes asked, "Shouldn't we run diagnostics first?" Jack looked up, eyes hard. "Diagnostics tell you what's broken. Listening tells you why." Hayes muttered. "Sounds like fortune cookie wisdom." Jack smirked. "Then maybe you're hungry." Hour after hour, Jack worked. No music, just the low growl of a man reuniting with ghosts. He didn't eat, barely drank, but he moved with focus. And slowly, the others noticed. The smell of warmed metal. The faint hum of something waking up. Not much, just enough. By nightfall, the officers expected him gone. Instead, they found him under the tank, welding sparks, dancing like fireflies. A few stood watching. None spoke. Hayes handed him a flashlight. Jack nodded in thanks, but didn't stop. One of the bolts had corroded straight through the axle mount. Jack cut a new one from old chassis metal. Why not request replacements? Hayes asked. Jack didn't look up. Because parts forget. Steel remembers. Hayes frowned. That doesn't even make sense. Jack paused. You think tanks are machines? They're not. They're memory vessels. They carry men, decisions, screams. You don't fix them. You earn their trust back. Hayes stayed quiet after that. The general visited that night. Just for a minute. Found Jack sitting on the tank's hull, staring at the stars. You know what command wants? Jack replied. Yeah. Flashy success. PR win. Headlines. The general nodded. And what do you want? Jack answered without looking away. For her to feel proud again. They stood in silence, the wind cold and clean. This tank ever see combat? Jack asked. The general, Berlin, Kuwait, maybe Kosovo, but no record survived the archive fire. Jack tapped aside, she remembers. You can burn paper. You can't burn history made from blood and bolts. Then he climbed back down, vanished into the belly again. Day 2 came. The engineers had questions. Jack had tools. Slowly, they watched how he handled parts, not just installing but connecting. He sorted not for function, but flow. Rerouted old circuits through pathways the manuals never taught. That's not regulation, one protested. Jack said, neither was surviving but we did. At noon, Hayes brought him a sandwich. Jack didn't eat, just took the bread, fed it to the crows that circled the supply yard. They remember, too, he said. Hayes gave up trying to understand. Instead, he started handing Jack tools before being asked. He didn't know what half of them were, but Jack did. By the third night, the tank blinked. A single interior light, just a flicker. But it was her. Jack grinned. Hayes saw it too. That's not possible. Jack turned, wiped grease from his cheek. You keep saying that. Maybe change the question. Hayes frowned. To what? Jack answered. What's stopping her? The crew gathered, unsure whether to believe. Some laughed. Some watched in awe. The tank didn't care. She just hummed again, louder now. Jack whispered something under his breath. No one caught it, but the general did. He stood nearby, eyes distant. He's not fixing her, he muttered. He's apologizing. Later that night, Hayes found Jack asleep against the hull, one hand resting on a metal plate like it was someone's shoulder. A rag covered his legs. The hum from the dashboard hadn't stopped. Hayes didn't wake him. He just sat beside the tank, watched the stars, and wondered how a man could fix steel with silence. The second morning arrived with the smell of diesel, old dust, and something else. Anticipation, not from the officers or engineers, but from the tank itself. She stood there under the sun, bolts still battered, armor still scarred, but no longer silent. Jack arrived before dawn. Just purpose in every step. He ran a calloused hand across the welded patch from the night before. It held. Not pretty, but solid. That's how survival worked. It wasn't elegant. It was earned. Hayes showed up late, coffee in hand, eyes tired. Sleep? Jack asked. Hayes shrugged. Kinda, Jack replied. Tank didn't. She murmured all night. Hayes laughed nervously. You naming her now? Jack didn't smile. Every tank has a name. You don't give it. She tells you. Hayes mumbled something about superstition, but he didn't argue. Jack handed him a wrench. Hold this, and don't drop it. She remembers clumsy. Hayes gripped it tight. You're serious? Jack just nodded. They started with rewiring, not replacements. Jack stripped the casing back, exposing filaments that looked more like veins than circuit. Most people, solder wires, he said. I negotiate. Hayes shook his head. With what? Jack whispered. With time. The new junction sparked. Then health. Somewhere inside, the dashboard blinked, just once. Throughout the day, more engineers gathered around the hangar. Some came curious, others skeptical, but all stood back when Jack moved. There was something in his silence that made even the cocky lieutenants shut up, like watching a sculptor pull meaning out of marble, or a man talking to someone long buried, but never forgotten. The turret gears had rusted shut. Engineers tried torque arms and lubricants before. Nothing worked. Jack examined the mechanism, leaned close, and tapped it 3 times. Then used a brass mallet, gentle, measured. The turret groaned like waking from a nightmare, moved 2 inches. Hayes gasped. You didn't loosen it. Jack nodded. I reminded it. Midday sun hit hard. Sweat beaded across Jack's brow, but he didn't slow. Hayes offered water. Jack took a sip, then poured the rest across a fan shroud to test for thermal dispersion. It's not thirst, he said. It's heat, stress. Hayes blinked. On you or the tank? Jack replied. Both. I just sweat louder. One by one, systems responded. Not because they were forced, because they were respected. Jack rerouted the ignition panel using scrap from an old radio. Modern parts confuse her, he explained. Too clean. Too obedient. She needs edge. Needs attitude. Hayes grinned. Jack answered, no. I'm resurrecting one. After hours of work, Jack climbed into the cockpit. Sat quietly. Just ... Sat. Eyes closed. Hands resting on the wheel. Hayes watched awkwardly. Are we meditating now? Jack didn't answer. Then, click, a relay engaged. The panel lit up red, then dimmed to amber. Jack opened one eye. She's thinking. Hayes froze. No way. The base commander arrived unexpectedly, clipboard in hand, medals polished. Progress? He asked coldly. Jack didn't look up. She moved her turret. The commander scoffed. A rusted servo twitching isn't movement. Jack stood. You want a dance or a heartbeat? The commander glared. I want a working tank, Jack replied. Then step aside. Let her heal. That evening, the welding torches hissed like snakes. Jack reinforced the lower hull, not because it was needed, but because it felt right. Combat readiness isn't about stats, he said. It's about feel. About how she moves under you. The way she speaks in recoil and rumble. Hayes muttered. You sure you're not a poet? As night fell, Hayes stayed back to help. No one asked him to. He just didn't want to leave. Jack handed him a socket wrench. Tried tightening this. Hayes fumbled at first, but Jack guided his hand. No. Let her tell you. Too much pressure and she'll resist. Too little and she'll ignore you. The wrench clicked into place. Hayes grinned. That felt right. Jack nodded. Now do it 63 more times. Hayes groaned. You serious? Jack smiled faintly. Every bolt tells a story. If you rush the story, you miss the point. And for the first time, Hayes didn't roll his eyes. He just tightened another bolt. Later that night, they stood outside the hangar under the stars. The tank behind them still humming faintly. Hayes leaned against the wall. What made you leave the service? Jack didn't answer immediately. I didn't leave. The war just got quiet, but I never stopped hearing it. Hayes looked at him. And now, Jack said, now I listen. They worked side by side for hours more. No orders. No blueprints. Just instinct. Hayes rewired the altimeter. Jack adjusted the recoil stabilizer. Together, they built trust. Not just with the tank, but with each other. By midnight, half the systems flickered green. Hayes stared. We did that. Jack replied. She did. We just hoped. As the third day neared, the general visited again. No entourage. Just coffee and an old patch from Jack's former unit. He placed it gently on the dashboard. She carried them, he said softly. She deserves to wear them again. Jack nodded, voice low. Then she'd better earn it. Tomorrow she breathed.
Night fell heavy and thick across the base like a dark blanket smothering restless fires. The tank sat quiet under the moonlight, her steel hull cold but expectant. Jack arrived alone, shadows wrapped tight around his silhouette. No engineers tonight! Just man and machine in the silence that holds secrets and long memories. The storm was coming, they said. Thunder grumbled in the distance like a warning. But Jack didn't flinch. He climbed into the hatch with a practiced grace, fingers brushing controls that felt more like old friends than cold metal. The cockpit smelled of oil, rust, and history, a scent no digital sensor could capture. The engine coughed when Jack turned the ignition. A shudder ran through the tank like a groan from a sleeping giant. The gauges flickered uncertainly, dials spinning, then steadying. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fast, but it was alive. And for Jack, that was the sound of hope clawing its way back from the edge. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the base in stark, brief bursts. The rain was coming faster now, cold drops hitting the tank like sharp fingers. Jack's eyes never left the instruments. He twisted knobs, adjusted valves, coaxed the engine through its painful awakening. Every movement was precise, a dance he'd learned through blood and dirt. The tank rumbled to life, a low growl vibrating through her massive frame. It wasn't loud, it wasn't fierce, but it was steady, the kind of steady that meant survival. Jack felt it through the controls, through the seat beneath it, like the heartbeat of a warrior who had long forgotten how to rest. The radio crackled suddenly, static breaking the night silence. Hayes' voice cut through, tense but hopeful. "Jack! You there?" Jack answered without turning. "I'm here! She's here!" The words hung heavy in the cold air. This was more than a test. It was proof that the past still lived in steel and sweat. Jack eased the tank forward, the treads grinding softly against wet earth. The tank moved uncertainly at first, hesitating like a soldier stepping back into combat after years away. Then, slowly, confidence built in her joints. The growl became a hum. The hum became a promise that she could fight again, that she could survive. Lightning struck again, briefly silhouetting the tank as she rolled forward. Jack guided her around the test range with careful precision, navigating puddles and rough terrain. The base watched, breath caught, as the machine moved like a ghost from the past, half remembered, half reborn. The night held its breath in awe. The rain hammered harder, masking sounds, but not the growl inside the tank. Jack focused on the controls, sweat mixing with rain, eyes sharp. Despite exhaustion, every jolt and shudder was a message from the tank's wounded body, and Jack listened as if deciphering a lost language only they share. Trust was rebuilding. The general watched from the observation tower, hands clasped behind his back. No smile, but a gleam of pride in his eyes. "She's alive," he said softly to no one in particular. The words carried weight, a silent tribute to the men who had fought, to the machines that carried them, and to the veteran who refused to give up. Jack pushed the tank through its paces, testing, turning, radius, speed, and suspension. Each movement a battle against decades of neglect and rust. But the tank answered, sometimes hesitating, sometimes surging forward, always fighting. Jack's hands never wavered. This wasn't just mechanics. It was faith in metal and muscle. Suddenly, the radio buzzed. "Incoming storm is severe. You should return to shelter." Hayes' voice was cautious, but Jack didn't flinch. "She's steady," Jack replied. "Let her prove it." The storm was a test, yes, but also a baptism. The tank wasn't just waking up. She was being forged anew in the fire of the tempest. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the tank's silhouette as thunder roared overhead. Jack felt the vibrations ripple through the controls, matching the storm's fury. The machine was no longer a relic, but a warrior reborn. Each growl was a heartbeat, each rumble a pulse. This was more than a vehicle. It was a testament. The storm pushed harder, wind lashing, rain blinding. The tank moved through it all, steadfast and true. Jack's face was set, determination carved deep. This night wasn't about glory. It was about survival, resilience, and honoring what had been lost and what was being The growl was a promise. They would not be forgotten. When dawn broke, the storm had passed. The tank sat quiet again, but no longer lifeless. Jack climbed out, soaked but smiling faintly. The base erupted quietly with relief and the impossible had happened. The machine had ground, a sound older than time, stronger than doubt. Jack nodded quietly. "We're just getting started."
His hands moved over the controls with a steady confidence, born from years of grit and grit alone. He didn't rush. Each command was deliberate, a dance of precision and patience. The general stood nearby, watching silently, his weathered face unreadable but his eyes shining with pride and a touch of something deeper. The test range was cleared. Engineers, commanders, and soldiers held their breath. The tank rumbled forward, treads gripping earth with renewed hunger. The engines roared to life, raw and imperfect, but fierce. This was no polished machine for parades. This was a warrior reborn to prove its worth under fire. Jack spun the turret with practiced ease, lining up on the first target. The shell launched, tearing through the air like a spear. Impact was clean and precise, a perfect strike. Cheers tried to rise, but were swallowed by respect. This wasn't about showmanship. This was about honor, and Jack knew it well. The general's voice broke the silence. "Live fire, maneuver test. Proceed." The tank moved across the course, turning, reversing, navigating debris with surprising agility. Jack's hands didn't falter. The machine responded like a loyal companion. Steel and man connected by invisible threads of trust and history. A sudden blast simulation rocked the range. Jack braced. The tank shuddered, but held firm. Sensors monitored hull integrity, suspension, strength, and engine stress. Every reading came back with intolerance. The tank was no longer fragile. It was forged anew, not just in metal, but in spirit. The battle wasn't over, but the war inside was won. Hayes watched, amazed. I never thought this was possible. Jack glanced at him. You don't fix things by forcing them back to life. You coax them. You respect their scars. The young engineer nodded slowly, understanding dawning. This was more than mechanics. This was a lesson in patience and pride. As the final rounds fired, the tank's gun roared again and again, each shot more confident than the last. The ground trembled beneath them. Jack's face was stoic, but inside, a fire burned. This machine was not just a relic of war, she was a testament to resilience, to history, to lives, intertwined with steel. Jack walked to the tank's side, placing his hand on the cold steel. You carried more than armor, he whispered. You carried us all. The plaque was unveiled later that day, M115 reforged, call sign, honor, but Jack was already gone, disappearing like a ghost into the early morning mist, leaving behind a legacy stronger than rust. In quiet moments, the tank still hums softly, a heartbeat amid the silence. It reminds those who listen that history isn't just recorded in books. It's lived, breathed, and fought for. Jack's work was more than restoration. It was remembrance, a promise that neither men nor machines truly die. They endure, reborn through honor and fire.